back to the Bold Podcast. I'm Todd Birch, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this inspiring journey of personal growth and leadership. Together with my guests, we'll dive into transformational stories, uncovering how small, intentional changes can create massive positive results in your life. From overcoming challenges and setting impactful goals to building lasting habits and living with confidence, health, and positivity, we'll explore it all. And if you're ready to embrace a growth mindset and unlock the best version of yourself, then let's spark that transformation today. Today's guest is Michael Levitt. Michael is a burnout survivor, AI solutions consultant, global thought leader on HR and wellness, therapist, keynote speaker, author, executive coach, and host of the Breakfast Leadership Show podcast. Michael, welcome to the Bolt Podcast, my friend.
Great to be with you today.
Oh, man. I was really looking forward to this conversation. You and I share a lot of the same passions and have had similar challenges. So you wrote a book. When did you write the 369 book?
That came out in 2017. And if you want to be a bestseller, don't release your book the same day that Hillary Clinton releases her book. It just don't do that. Yeah.
There you go, guys. We have a lot of listeners that are soon to be authors, including myself. So good advice. Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, let's get right into that book. I read through it. Wow. It's called 369 Days, right?
That's correct. Yeah. How to survive your worst case scenarios.
How to survive your worst case scenarios. And you did this. So you get incredibly personal, you get vulnerable. Take us through the cliff notes of what kind of year? I mean, you had one hell of a year. What happened and how did this change your life?
Yeah, back in 2007, I was hired as a healthcare executive just outside of Windsor, Ontario, across the border from Detroit, Michigan. That comes into play in a moment. So here I am in a startup healthcare organization. I'd never worked in healthcare before, but I had a lot of startup experience, and that's the reason why they hired me. Even though I didn't know exactly why they hired me for over a year, then they finally told me. It's usually, do you want the offer? Yes. Usually don't ask, well, why did you hire me? What did I say? No one asked that stuff, and I certainly didn't. But I found out later it was because of my startup experience, and they knew that I'd be able to pick it up pretty quickly, and I did. But in being with a startup, and especially if you're an entrepreneur or you're working for a startup organization, there's a lot of stuff going on. And for me, even though I was an employee, I treated this organization as if it was my company. And I probably shouldn't have done that, but I did. And I just was working and working and working. Didn't know how to delegate. Even though I'd been a manager or an executive before, I just didn't know how to delegate in the healthcare setting because the healthcare workers were so busy helping with patients and everything else. So I was just, if it was anything administrative, I was doing it, even though we had admin staff on board. Long story short, for 2 solid years, I was pretty much working from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week. I was constantly working, doing things and all of that. And it came to a crashing halt in May of 2009, which kicked off what we talked about before, my year of worst case scenario. So over a period of a year, this is what happened. In May of 2009, I had a heart attack at age 40 that should have killed me. The cardiologist that put the stents in my arteries told me, you should be dead. I accused him of skipping bedside manner class in medical school. He laughed, I laughed. My mom and my first wife, they didn't find that joke funny at all, but we thought it was funny. We had a good time with it. But then that kicked off the rest of the dominoes, where 17 weeks later, after recovering from my cardiac event, I went back to work, or attempted to, and they decided they wanted to go a different direction, so they let me go. 2009. Great Recession. Anybody remember that? Needless to say, jobs were nowhere to be found. People that had jobs certainly weren't going to leave them. So it took me several months and finally a relocation to be able to find a new job. So found the new job, started working there. Was about 3.5 hours from Windsor. And I decided, okay, let's get back into the swing of things. And my family was still back in Windsor, so I was renting a room basically until we could find a place to rent to move the family up. Finally found that. But then prior to moving, I get a phone call. It was like my second week at work. And my oldest daughter, who was 10 at the time, called and said, and she was crying, couldn't understand the things she was saying. Finally, I was able to get from her that the bank had come and they repossessed her family vehicle. Reason why they did that was when you are on unemployment, if anybody's ever had the pleasure of that, we know that that doesn't pay a whole lot. So I was the main breadwinner in the house. So that went down. So basically, I had to cover our food and our expenses, and plus heart medication. That was $1,000 a month out of pocket, and
Oh, gosh.
I didn't have any insurance. So eat, keep alive, or make the mortgage payment and the car payment. And made the choice. Now, we had worked, and I always recommend this. If you are in financial difficulties, always work with your creditors. Don't ignore the calls. You call them. Don't wait for them to call you. You call
Right.
them, keep them up to date. And they were very gracious for as long as they could be. But if you remember, this is the Great Recession. There was a lot of people going through the same stuff. So ultimately, they said, all right, you guys aren't making payments. We're going to exercise our right to take the vehicle back, which they did. And then, well, that's unfortunate. Thankfully, we had a second vehicle, which I was driving and was paid off, so we didn't lose that. So finally get the place to rent, move the family, and then after we're unpacking and everything, realized we left the bunk bed ladder for our daughter's bed back at the old house. So I was going back there the following weekend, meet with some friends, close up some accounts, and get the realtor, anything else he needed, because we were going to list the house for sale. And so go visit and do all the things, go to the house to go get the ladder, open up the front screen door, and I see the largest padlock I've ever seen in my life. You can't get these at Home Depot. I mean, this thing was massive. And there was a sticker on the door that said foreclosure. So in a year, heart attack, job loss, car repossession, home foreclosure. And all those things happened to me because I was burned out. I was so burned out that I was making mistakes at work. I wasn't taking care of my health, my relationships, friends. I stopped going to do things that I loved doing. Just everything was a mess because I was working so much that I was so burned out that everything fell apart in my life. And thankfully, I survived it. Now at that point, thankfully I did a lot of work during that time between the heart attack and the job loss. Started to do a little bit of reflection going, okay, this is not where I want to be. I'm very fortunate. I know I'm lucky to be alive. What do I need to do to make sure this never happens again? So I'd already started doing that work. But after all of those things happened, I closed the screen door at the house, and this always throws people off. It was the most serene and peaceful moment I've ever experienced in life. And everybody's like, what? You just saw your house foreclosure sticker. You can't get into it anymore. It's no longer yours. How can you be calm and serene? Because I knew that was it. I'd survived everything else. I already had a job, had a vehicle, had a place to live. My health was getting better. So literally, I felt the breeze. I heard birds chirping. It was quiet on that, it was a Sunday morning. It was very quiet, and I closed the screen door and then called back, called up home and said, yeah, about the bunk bed ladder. We're not going to get it or anything else that's in that house because they foreclosed us. And what was so frustrating was, for some reason, I don't know what happened. We weren't getting any calls from them, and they stopped sending us letters. Because they're saying when we'd send back and correspond and all that, we told them we're getting ready to sell the house. So it's listed, Remax, it's going to be sold.
Right.
But they ran out of patience again because a lot of people are going through the same situations. A lot of foreclosures were going on then. So it was like, well, but the house was ready for sale. So, when the bank resold it, it wasn't a case like the house was destroyed and they had to go in and patch it up and all that. No, it was showroom ready to be sold. So whoever bought the house, I'm sure they bought it through foreclosure, and they're like, okay, what kind of mess do we have? And it's like, there wasn't one. Well, other than a bunk bed ladder, but no bunk bed. So I'm sure they disposed of it, or maybe they repurposed it for something. I don't know. But that was one of those pinnacle moments that years later ended up birthing the company and the work that I do. And that wasn't my intent. After recovering from that, ironically, I was, as you know, I was working in healthcare. Probably should have paid attention to what they were telling people, but I was back in healthcare and stayed in that field for, that was 8 years after that. But I kept after a few years, after recovering and doing things better and living a better life, I started looking at my peers. I'm like, uh-oh, they're going down the same road I did. I can't, no, I can't stand by and just say, yeah, good luck. No, I need to do something. So I started talking a little bit within the industry, little breaks and little sessions at conferences and whatnot. And then from there, it's like, maybe I should do some consulting on this because I have a unique perspective on this.
Mm-hmm.
Had it, know the signs of it, know how to get out of it, know how to prevent it. So I've kind of done the whole thing. I probably should say I've done it all so you don't have to. That's probably a good phrase for me to use because I don't want anybody to ever go through anything remotely close to that. And unfortunately, a lot of people have, and a lot of people are approaching that, and I see it. During the pandemic and post-pandemic, I saw burnout just absolutely skyrocket, which was the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of what I thought was going to happen at first. I thought
Right.
everybody got sent home, everybody can take a breather, time out,
Mm-hmm.
and go, all right. And a lot of people did. A lot of people did a little bit of reflection and realized, I don't want to do this anymore. So they left their professions and started doing something else.
Right.
But a lot of people didn't. It's still a big, big problem for a lot of people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Well, first off, kudos to you, man. I'm glad that you obviously made it through that. Most people would have just jumped off the bridge, honestly. That's a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's one thing to have a heart attack. It's another thing to lose your house. But oh my gosh, all those things to happen consecutively in 1 year, most people wouldn't have been able to make it through that. So I don't know if you believe in, everything happens for a reason. But obviously you were put here to do other things, my friend. And
Oh, yeah.
and fortunately for you, you were able to find your purpose in life, which is a beautiful thing. Not a lot of people have that opportunity. And unfortunately, Michael, what happens, and I really love what you're doing. I think if you can get people before, right, they get to burnout or to that point where it's just going to fall off the ledge, to have that educational components or that moment with them. But typically what happens is it takes a traumatic or life triggering event before somebody realizes they need to make a change. That's just the nature of who we are. My message and what I'm trying to do is similar to you in that I'm trying to get ahead of it, right?
Mhm.
To educate people to say, hey, let's just cultivate a growth and open mindset all year round. Let's not wait for that, or not that they're sitting at home waiting for it, but let's not let that happen. Allow that to happen. Let's just get in front of it
Mhm.
and start to have these conversations. And it could be just 1% better every day, right? Just
Yeah.
small shifts. But unfortunately, I think, a lot of people live in a fixed mindset and are comfortable and cozy, and they just go through the motions. And I think in your case, I've done the same thing, my friend. I'm an entrepreneur. Ironically, I started my business, my Evolve Marketing, digital marketing company in 2009. And, those first few years, I was approaching or probably hit burnout. And I also had my second child during that time. So, imagine starting a business and having a child, and my wife called me out and said, "Hey, man, you're not putting in the time. Like, time here. I need you. I need your support." And fortunately, I had a good foundation, and we worked together as a team. But there were definitely moments where I wasn't aware of burnout. I grew up in a blue collar
Mhm.
environment and scrappy, and just
Mhm.
work your ass off until
Mhm.
you get there, and
Yeah.
and keep working. And I felt like that was what I had because I didn't have the MBA. I didn't have all these other things. So I had to accommodate it, right, with extra work. But certainly once I got into the personal growth path, I saw the light. And that's definitely not the way to go. So I love, unfortunately, what it took to get you here, but I love what you're doing. I agree with it. We put out a lot of the same messages here on
Mhm.
the Bolt. In fact, I just launched 2 solo casts in the past month about work-life balance and decision fatigue,
Mhm.
which tie in, nicely with
Yeah.
your message.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where, and you mentioned a moment ago about people being. I don't think you used the word lazy, and there's an element of that. But I think we like to be comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and we spend way too much time on the most dangerous street you can be on, which is Comfort Avenue. Just,
Mm.
you can't. You got to grow. You got to challenge yourself. You got to grow, even if it's a 1% a day. Well,
Right.
if you take off weekends, that's still 260%. I mean, you almost 3x yourself in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what your year would look like. And
Right.
no matter what the economy looks like, no matter who is the political party in charge, none of that matters. As an individual, you control your destiny. And I am of the abundance mindset where
Mm-hmm.
it's out there. You can go get it. Doesn't matter what's going on. During the Great Depression, which we've seen all the footage and the films and all of that, and maybe we know some people that were alive back then. Not an easy time. There were
Mm-hmm.
people that were prospering during those times. Okay, what did they do? How did they do it? You know what? And it wasn't because their last name was Rockefeller. There were people, that normal day-to-day people, that were doing well, or at least okay during a really difficult time. What did they do? Figure it out. What's your role in this big thing we call life? And figure that out. Give it your all, give it your best, be the best version of you by taking care of you first.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so important. And as entrepreneurs and dads and parents, is we give, but if we're not taking care of ourselves first, then what we're giving is watered down or crap, quite frankly. It's not good.
Mm-hmm.
So be your best. That way, when you do give, when you do serve, whatever you're doing, the recipient is getting the best version of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't like seeing people burn out, obviously, from, the tragedies that can happen from it. But when people are burned out and they're working in companies, the products and services that those companies are making aren't as good. I want the best. I want everybody
Mm-hmm.
to have the best, because I'm selfish. I want good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I want the coffee I drink to be good. I want the tea to be good. I want the computer I work on to be good. I want the restaurants near me good. I want, my accountant to be really good. Please be good. But having said all that, when people are at their best, then you don't have retention problems at work. You don't have the high stress, chronic diseases. Having worked in primary care for a long time, pretty much every chronic disease, whether it's diabetes, hypertension, all of them, stress is a
Yep.
common ingredient to all of them.
Yep.
Your body, when your body's stressed out, your body is using its energies and resources to address that stress, which means it's not paying attention to the other parts of your body, which is when you start gaining weight or dealing with hypertension.
Inflammation. Yeah.
Inflammation is a huge one, and that one,
Yeah.
couple those two together, you're having a good day. And I say
Yeah.
that sarcastically. It's not.
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
not good.
No.
So address the stress. Get ahead of it.
Yeah. Address the stress. I like that. Yeah. Amen, brother. I'm all about what you're saying. I think the challenge, Michael, is, and I'm actually in the midst of formalizing what my first book is going to be about. And one of the concepts I keep coming back to, because I'm really interested in that mindset continuum. And we have the fixed and the open on the other side. How do we get somebody? And I think what you and I are trying to do is really impact as many people as possible. But there are a lot of people that are in a fixed mindset who aren't open to growth. I think it's an easier sell. It's an easier message, an easier conversation to have when somebody is already on that continuum. Maybe they're not full bore growth, but they're at least open to it. So what I keep coming back to, Michael, is one word, and that's curiosity.
Mm.
So we all we at some point in our life as kids, we were curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
That inner child within us, we were curious. We explored, we wondered, we asked questions, right? And then at some point we get into a box, as we grow older, and we lose that curiosity. So I think if we can just tap into and ignite that spark within us, that curiosity spark, and then just be open, like you said, to learning and learning about burnouts, learning about personal growth and a growth mindset and positivity. We won't have these traumatic events and these triggers in our life. We'll be getting better every day. We'll be cognizant of stress and how it impacts us in a negative way. So yeah, I think we're talking about the same things. We're just in different circles and focusing on different aspects, but it all comes back to having an open mindset, right? And just being cognizant of where you're at and and where you want to be and where you don't want to be. So I think it's when you can have someone like you share that story. Like when I read, I was like, oh my God, like this guy, he's not just blowing smoke here. He's been there. He's done it. And I've had some things in my life, some struggles and challenges, and I've been doing the work, and I've, been going through positive intelligence and personal growth for several years now, and I've seen it. I'm a whole new person. So it can happen. You just
Yeah.
need to be open to it. So anyhow, I'm off my soapbox, Michael. Sorry, but you got me excited here. And so
No,
tell us about, how do you help people? So if somebody, what are the telltale signs of somebody that's approaching burnout?
yeah. Before I get to that, I want to comment on the curiosity component because
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
that was the game changer for me when I was recovering from my burnout and everything else, during that 17-week period. Because the natural, unfortunately, the natural habits that people have is when something bad happens to them and they're to blame. A lot of times they point fingers, they blame somebody else. Why did this happen? They just be mad and miserable, or they beat themselves up. I was so foolish. Why did I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I avoided that because I'm like, look, I've already been beaten up. I don't need to beat myself up anymore. So when I was going through the exercises of kind of figuring out, okay, how did I get here? I used childlike curiosity.
Mm,
And this was before I went to therapy or anything like that. I
right.
was thankfully, just, I said, let's approach this as if I was the 4-year-old version of me.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just ask questions. Okay, why was I working all those hours? What was I trying to prove or accomplish? Was I trying to stroke my ego? Or was it so important for me to do the work that I did, build this startup healthcare organization in an area that needed additional doctors? Why was that important to me? What was I trying to accomplish? And went through all the exercises, through all of that, and it was very, very helpful. And and I can't say that I do it all the time, but when I'm going through something, whether it's a challenge or working on a project or whatever, a lot of times like, okay, let's invite the 4-year-old in here and let's see if I'm missing anything. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that because it was a game changer for me. And I have a lot of people do that when they're trying to figure out, okay, how did I get to this state? But that's
Mm,
a little bit deeper into the work. But the signs I see time and time again with people that are burned out, number one, is they're fatigued, they're not sleeping well, or they stop doing things in life that they enjoy doing. And real quick story on me: during that time I was burning up for the 369 days, I was a season ticket holder for the Detroit Tigers because I lived in that area, and there was a group of us that went to the games. This was when, like, 2006, 2007, 2008. I love baseball. My first career as an accountant was because of baseball cards, because I love calculating the stats on the back of the card or figuring out how to do it. So, loved baseball. I quit going to the games.
mm,
I paid for the tickets. Everything was paid for. With the season tickets, your parking's paid for, your food vouchers paid for, your beer vouchers paid for, your seats paid for. You got to get there. That's the only thing you got to do. And just use fuel in your car to get there. And I quit going because I was burned out. And that should have been the hugest red flag on the planet, but I completely ignored it. So that's another sign, is even though you're in this state and you're worn out, beaten up, frustrated, irritated, all that, the signs are there. I mean, literally, they're billboards, but you're flying by them doing, 100 miles an hour. You're not seeing what's on the billboards. So that's a big thing. If you start having more digestive situations or health related issues, again, that's your body telling you. When
mm-hmm.
you have those things, that's your body telling it's a messenger. It's like, hey, you probably should reconsider doing this, or you need to rest a little bit more. Again, I mentioned, making mistakes at work, because when you're not sleeping, you're not getting good rest. That impacts your cognitive abilities, so you don't see patterns, or you don't recognize things. So you're looking at a spreadsheet and you're trying to find where the error is in the calculation. Before ChatGPT, you'd have to fumble with it. You can just say, "Hey, here's this spreadsheet. I can't figure it out. What's wrong?"
Right.
It kicks it right out. But before that, it could be right there, and you wouldn't see it because you're just so wound up, burned out, fatigued. You're just basically numb. And a lot of people ask me, it sounds a lot like depression, clinical depression and burnout. A lot of parallels. As somebody that's been through both of those situations, the biggest difference for me in that is when you're burned out, you're still able to function. You're still okay to do things. Yeah, you're digging deep in the reserves and you're not really doing it well, but you're at least there. Sometimes the depression, depending on how bad it is, you're just not willing to, or you can't. You don't have not the energy, but you just don't have the drive or the willpower to do it. You just want to curl up and go into a corner. But there's still a lot of research going on between those two. We'll see how that all plays out years down the road, but it's a huge problem. I mean, the World Health Organization, prior to the pandemic, classified workplace burnout as basically a workplace phenomenon and issued an ICD code, which is usually reserved for diseases, but they issued one for workplace burnout. And then
what's an ICD code?
ICD, it's basically, they classify diseases. So they assign it an ICD number.
Gotcha, okay.
But they didn't classify burnout as a disease. Do I think it's a disease? Understanding healthcare, I don't think burnout per se is a disease, but it is definitely a symptom or a condition which has all these other ingredients going on. And again, you want to get ahead of it before you have to go to the doctor and get on medications or take heart medications or any of those things, because I'm not going to argue medicine versus non-medicine or anything like that, but medicine does take a toll on your body over long periods of time. So depending on what it is, it can impact other things. So ideally, if you can eat the right foods for you, you don't have to take medication and you manage your stress and keep things under control, you won't have to worry about that. But unfortunately, too many people are going way down that path because of stressors at work, home stress, financial stress, which we know is a huge problem. And 7 out of 10 Americans are up to their eyeballs in debt. And they're like, a paycheck missed away from catastrophe. And it's like, okay, all right, well, how do you fix that? Well, you kind of have to correct some things and look for some opportunities. And there's, I do work in that area as well, because for me, of all the stressors that I had, financial stress was the worst, in my opinion. The reason being is I don't think anybody loves paying bills. I don't think anybody raises their hand and say, oh, yeah, I love paying bills. But I think we do like the ability to be able to pay bills. And I've been in the situation where I couldn't, and I didn't like that at all, because it was such a dent to the ego. You feel frustrated. You feel like you let somebody down. All that. So I understand that feeling first and foremost. So I know what it feels like when people are in those types of situations. So I was like, here's some ways that you can address that, and ultimately to get you back to the person you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, Michael, there's a responsibility with the employers,
Yes.
right? I think everyone should be tracking their time, even as a 10 to 15 person agency that I've ran for 16 years, for 14 of those years, we've tracked our time. And one, like a CPA, right, or a law firm, it's billable time, right? So we want to make sure that we're profitable on the time spent on projects, but also tracking our time to make sure that we have a good work balance, that we're not seeing employees burned out.
Right.
So we're actually taking a proactive part in our employees' journey with us to say, we understand that this can happen. We want you to do your best work. We want you to be here and stay here. So from a retention, this is probably something you talk about, but I just feel like, who says it's okay to work the amount of hours that you were working? Was there anybody in your network, your boss who you reported to, or your spouse or your friends that were saying, hey, Michael, dude, like, where the hell you been? Like, all you're doing is working. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it shouldn't all be on the person too. There should be these accountability partners, your tribe, right? That's looking out for you. And then that's on you, right? If you're just blowing them off or you're not responding, then you're already on burnout boulevard and
Hmm.
there's no coming back. So anyhow, I don't know. It's just something I wanted to mention. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. My colleagues, the Tigers ticket crew, family, friends, after I was recovering from it, I asked them, why didn't you warn me? Do you see these things? Yeah, we saw them. Why didn't you say anything? We did. You wouldn't listen.
Mm,
They all did. And they all gave examples of when they talked to me about different things and what they said. And I remembered them saying it. It was just like basically like you're flipping around on television and you land on a station that has a different language than what you're used to. So you hear them. You're not comprehending what they're saying. You hear them, but you're not comprehending. That was my situation. I wasn't taking it in. I was hearing them, but I wasn't listening. And, I think that it should have been a big eye opening thing for me to go, okay, I need to take some time and really work through this. And I didn't until
right.
my heart says, we're going to go and we're going to take a time out here.
Right.
And we did. And
Right. Literally.
yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, you're laying there, and then, they're putting stents in your artery, which is the left anterior descending artery, which in cardiology world they call that artery the widowmaker.
Mm,
Hence why the doctor said I should be dead. The actor Kevin Smith from the Clerks movies and Mallrats and all that, he
mm,
had a heart scare a few years ago, and that's where his was. And he made and has made some significant health changes and choices and all of that because he got that second chance, and he's like, "Ooh, okay, I don't want people to have to rely on a second chance. Don't even spoil your chances.
right.
Live the life to the best of your ability. Be the best version of you, for you,
Right. Right.
and it's gonna make your life so much better. Everything tastes better. You experience things
Mm-hmm.
and nonsense and Taylor Swift gets booed or whatever the situation. Timely Super Bowl was yesterday, so
Mm-hmm.
seeing that on social media, I'm like, why are they booing Taylor? I'm like, okay. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, well, okay. People will be people. Don't get wrapped up in that kind of stuff because it truly doesn't matter. It's like live
Mm-hmm.
your best life and design your life the way that you want it to be. And obviously, you're the architect of your own life, so design it. If you need to retrofit or change or renovate, by all means do it. If it's for the betterment of you, guess what? The people you are around, your friends, family, loved ones, they're going to get the best version of you. And that's what we all deserve from everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thinking back, Michael, why do you think you were working so much? I know you said you asked a question
Yeah.
to your clients.
Hmm.
Why do you think, if you're willing to share that?
For me, it was a smaller community that I was in, and this was fully ego driven. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be recognized as someone really, really important that did some great things in that community. I wanted that. And to this day, I'm still working through, well, why did I want that? The accolades and, great job and we think you're the best or awards or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I look at those things now and I'm like, well, that's cool. Don't care about them. But back then I was trying to prove something. And, I wasn't from that community. So that I think that was part of it too. It's like because I saw how in small communities, and this can be in large ones too, but in small communities, a lot of times we see when there's somebody that's new to the community, they can be viewed as a bit of an outsider and
Mm-hmm.
not given the same. I don't say treatment, but we'll use that for now. Same treatment as someone that's been there for a long time, and I don't like seeing that. I don't like people being treated that way. I like people should be treated as who they are. Doesn't matter where they're from, just who they are as a person. And so I think for me it was like, well, I'm gonna prove them wrong. I'm gonna prove them that I'm this, and nearly killed myself by doing it. So and then of course moved out of that community and haven't been back since. So it's
Yeah.
wasn't that big of a deal for me now, but I see that and I still I still unpack it and go, okay, why? Why is that? And that's where the cognitive behavioral therapy and the neurolinguistic programming therapy that I
Mm-hmm.
got certifications in comes to play. And the reason why I did that was twofold. One, get a better understanding of how my brain works when it does,
Mm-hmm.
And also, I kept coming up against time and time again, working with individuals and teams, was their beliefs, their thoughts, the language they use on themselves, behaviors, habits, all those things kept coming up. I'm like, okay, why is this important? We use technique. It's called chunking up and chunking down. So, okay, why did you do this? Okay, well, why, was that important to you? And then sometimes they can go back and forth a little bit, but it's ultimately to get the person to start realizing, yeah, I was doing this because I really wanted this, even though I was saying this. And it's kind of a self-awareness thing. And as you know, most of us are blissfully unaware of ourselves. And when we go to look within, sometimes that's a very scary thing, and a lot of people avoid it like the plague. I don't want to look in myself. You're
Yeah.
you. But I understand why, because that's where the self-doubt, the self-judgment, and
Right.
the mistakes and all those things come up and flares up. And in some cases, it might even be some past trauma that has been unaddressed. So
Mhm.
they don't want to go down that road. And I understand, no pain, no pain. I get it. But if you want to move forward and progress and grow, you have to get an understanding of that. But again, that's where the childlike curiosity comes into play. Like, okay, well, let's
Mhm.
look at it as a little kid instead of your adult person. You're looking at it as a
Right.
kid. And a lot of people find that a lot more approachable to approach things that way.
Yeah, I would agree. I think most people are afraid of what they're going to find, right? They already know, but to go through an exercise or to do a life audit, they're going to see some things that, they're not proud of. But yeah, it's interesting. I think about how can we get people again, to think about these things before something happens. And I would venture out to say that there are certain people, and I'll say you and I, that have certain traits. I don't know what your love language is, but I could guess that it's words of affirmation like me, and that I'm going to be more prone to burnout than somebody who does not have that love language. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think if we could identify some of those people and traits to get them more aware so they don't have to go through the process, we're going to be better off. But yeah, it's interesting. It's all every show I do, and probably you the same, and conversations, speaking with companies or people and coaching them, it all comes back to just, are they open? Are they open to this conversation? Who's going to be open to listening to this episode about burnouts? Ironically, I talked about those two episodes I had on decision fatigue and work-life balance, and not two of my most popular episodes. And I'm just like, wow. I mean, these are things that people need to listen to, but that subject matter has not been that popular. So anyhow, I don't know. I don't know. Is this taboo to talk about this? Is this a tough subject? I don't know, but you're definitely out there talking with companies, coaching, executive coaching. And then you also wrote another book, Burnout Proof. I started going through that last week, and that seems like a really great book. Some really great nuggets that I took out of there. Tell us a little bit about that book and what we could find in there. We'll have that in your other book in the show notes as well.
Yeah, burnout proof was, this again, after going through all the things and the signs of burnout and what to look for and all of that, I say, okay, I got to put something out there, and I got to put it in a consumable format, which means not a Tim Ferriss Tool of Titans length book. Don't try to carry that book in a backpack. It's like you got to get a bigger backpack. It's huge, but mine isn't, and that's intentional. I didn't want it to be this long book, because if you are burned out, okay, here, read this 200-page book. Not
I think
gonna, not
most
gonna
books
happen.
are too long anyhow, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
really, you can get your point across in 100 pages. It
Yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah. Mine's under that. It's because I want to get to the point. Here it is. And here's what the signs are. Here's, and I even use burnout as an acronym. B for boundaries, U for upheaval or unhappy. I forget, because there's two U's in burnout. I forget which order it is. But upheaval, your life's upheaval. Rhythm, R, you're out of rhythm. And neglect, you're neglecting your life. O is offsides, you're out of bounds. You're not in the field of play, or, all of that. So BURNO, offside, and then U, upheaval or unhappy. Your world's upside down or you're not happy. And usually those go hand in hand. And T is time. We don't do a good job of using the time we're allocated. Time management is one of those things. You can't manage time. The last 40 minutes are gone. They're gone, and we can't do anything about it. But You can choose what you do with low time and have an understanding, to your point of keeping track of your time at work. I think that in a way that can help people to have a better understanding of how they spend their life. Because when I don't have time to do this, okay, well, let's take a look at how you're spending your time. And they don't have any journals or other, unless they keep track of time at work. But outside of work, they didn't put down, I watched Disney Plus for 3 hours last night. I'm not judging. I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. Just know how you're spending your time. So if you want to do something in addition, we all get 24. We need to sleep or rest at least a third of that, give or take. Some people need a little more. Some people need less. Figure out what works out for you. And then you've got your work hours and commute time and all of that. So you've got this block of time for the rest of it that you can devote to you. Okay, well, how are you devoting it to you? What are you doing? What are some of the things you can do? Whether it's instead of watching something on, Disney Plus or Netflix or all the other streaming services, maybe you watch an online class or you learn a new skill to better yourself at work, or maybe a side hustle, or maybe you want to switch careers. Okay, I want to learn how to code. Oh, well, there's no shortage of things on YouTube University on learning how to do things. So there's no excuse. We've never had an easier access to information to us. So figure out what you want to do, try it out. If you don't like it, do something else. But ultimately, all of those things came together in the book. And then I was getting ready to release it. And then this thing called the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So I pulled it back. I was getting ready to release it. I'm like, no, don't. And I added a chapter on that. Now, that was, early into the pandemic. So, there's obviously things that I would update from that. But it was, again, as I alluded to before, when the pandemic started, I thought, okay, finally, yes, this horrible disease that, is killing a lot of people might help kill burnout. But no. It brought gasoline. And they saw the burnout fire and they went sploosh, and it took off, and for a lot of additional reasons. And so it's been an interesting few years, to say the least. And for me, and I say this all the time, nothing would make me happier than burnout to go away. I'll go find something else to do.
Right.
I'm not worried about that, but it's still here. I don't like seeing it. I hate seeing people fall apart or lose their jobs or anything else because they're burned out. It doesn't have to be that way. I know what it's like to get into it. I know what it's like to get out of it, and I know what it's like to stay out of it. And ultimately, that's where you want to be. You want to get out of it, and ultimately, you want to stay out of it, because I had burnout once. I should have died from it. I'm not rolling the dice on that one again. No, thank you. Don't want to, and no one else should either.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. What advice do you have for aspiring leaders? If there's someone looking to grow as a leader, what advice would you give them to help them avoid burnout or develop some sustainable, process?
Yeah, for me, and this goes back to a colleague of mine, Virginia Muskies, who taught me this. This was back in 2018, so not that long ago, but a while ago. She said, color code your calendar. Now, if you're colorblind, that's a cruel joke. Don't color. You won't be able to see the colors. Use your favorite symbol if you're colorblind. But what you do is you keep track of your life. You journal your life. Calendars tend to be easiest because they've got the time blocks and all of that, but you can do it in a written format too if you want. But color code your calendar. So your work stuff is this way. You can get as deep as you want. If you do all kinds of different things through work, you can color code them. So phone calls is one color, podcast interviews is another, writing is another, coaching calls or clients or keynotes, whatever you want to do. Come up with it. There's plenty of symbols and plenty of colors to choose from. But also your me time or your self-care time, your personal time, or the time that you do things that you like to do, whether it's going to the movies, going golfing, going on a walk, shopping, going out to, for coffee or drinks with your friends, whatever. Color code that as well. And her tip was, for the me time or the just for you time, use your favorite color, or if you're colorblind, your favorite symbol. The reason being is I can look at my calendar and it's, got text and everything like that, but I can squint and not see the text, but I still see the colors. If I don't see enough of my favorite color, I know that week I'm not allocating enough time for me so I can adjust it. We all like, especially those of us that have OCD, and I have a poster that says I have CDO, which is OCD, but the letters are in alphabetical order as they should be. But it's a situation where nothing will make us, it was funny, we said, I wish everything would just stay the same and be consistent. But then we get bored and irritated if things haven't changed. It's like, okay.
It's a nasty cycle,
It
brother.
is. So understanding that each day and each week can look different. Yes, you have, using a bumper bowling analogy, yeah, you've got a thing to keep the ball on the track to hit the pins, but it's going to move around a little bit. So understanding that and getting comfortable with that will help you to be able to navigate through those times of doing what you need to do. I think of Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy, both of them, goal-oriented tasks, be your best, set yourself up for success, all of that. And it's like every day you pick, one or two things on your goals list to work on. Does that mean you're going to work on those exclusively? No. If you're running a business, who knows what you could face? It could be client calls, they need this yesterday, or toilets backed up, or someone's got the flu, or I need to do this, or you name it. It's basically an encyclopedia of everything that could happen to disrupt what you want to do today gets thrown at you.
Right.
If you look that up, that's called Monday. Or any other day, but understanding then, okay, what can I control? And this is a stress management tip. What can I control in this particular situation? I can control my emotions towards it, because being upset and well, that's going to take your clarity and attention away from the situation, and you're just going to be focusing on the and that's the amygdala.
Right.
That's the amygdala talking. I have a nickname. I call it Amy G, and I tell Amy she needs to shut the hell up. But
that's a great mnemonic device.
Yeah, but the amygdala is designed for our protection.
Amy G.
So,
I love that.
Yeah, so if anybody with the name Amy G, I apologize, it's not directed at you. But it's just something that came up, and it's like sometimes I go, okay, I think Amy G's talking. All right, hold on, and just recenter yourself to, okay, now this is what I need to work on. And it's again, it's not as much as we all would love to set it and forget it. That's not how life is. Life is ever evolving and moving and flowing, and the idea is to just, if you're a surfboarder, grab the board and look for the good waves and go after them. And there's going to be some where it's going to be calm, and you're like, okay, and it's just a case of understanding that and going, okay, what can I do in this particular moment that can help me move my initiatives forward, or what's good for me forward, and give yourself the permission to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Good stuff, Michael. We talk a lot on this show about calendars and time management and different techniques. Absolutely. Mine is a rainbow of colors. But I actually never thought about the squint and actually looking at my calendar, like proactively, like the week ahead, or even in reflection the week back, to say, what was the percentage of color that was for work or personal, right? Like you said, to have that the 888, the third split up. So that's interesting. I like that. And to choose your favorite color. Yeah. Good tips there. Absolutely love that. So I did want to talk about too your podcast. So you have a great show, the Breakfast Leadership Show, in the top 2% globally, which I'll tell you guys, that is kudos to you. Congrats, because that is hard to get. Not a lot of podcasts are in that top 2%. So it must be a good show. I listened to a couple of episodes. I liked your last one with Mike, I believe his name, Mike Felding. Mike Fielding, that was a good one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but tell us a little bit about your show and what it's about and what kind of guests you have on the show.
I have amazing people. I know you're coming up on it too, and I always love talking with fellow podcasters, but it's not like we're talking a secret shop that none of you non-podcasters know. No, we just have conversations. We end up being conversationalists. It started back in 2017, and it was something that I reluctantly started because a good colleague of mine said, "You know what? When are you going to do a podcast?" And I'm like, "What?" What are you talking about? Why do I need to do a podcast? So just do a podcast, record like 5-minute segments on how to avoid this type of burnout or how to deal with this. Just go do that. Just throw it out there. So people benefit because people are consuming your stuff anyway. Maybe they want to listen to it instead of reading an article. It'd be quick. They can listen to it on the way to work or wherever they're going. And it's
Right.
quick, segments, not a whole lot of time or effort. So I did. So recorded like 50 or 60 episodes like that. And then he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, yeah, good job on the podcast. Thank you." It's like, yeah, it's kind of hitting its stride. I mean, I could do some stuff, maybe not release them as frequently. He said, "Well, you should start interviewing people." What? No, I don't want to interview people. How do I even do that? And he goes, "Well, how do you use to record?" And use Zoom. I'm like, "I use Zoom." You send them the link and you add them to the meeting. There,
Right.
record, go. I'm like, I don't want to do that. And it's like, just try it and see. Well, we're approaching 900 episodes now. So apparently I tried it and liked it.
Yeah. What's the cadence to get that? Are you doing multiple a week?
Yeah, usually multiple a week. It ebbs and flows. I typically try to take like the end of the year off for sure. And then
Avoid burnout.
avoid burnout. Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I got to eat my own dog food is
Right.
a tech term that I learned a long time ago. It's like that's for tech companies that sell software. It's like you better use it internally for something so you can see the pain and agony your clients are dealing with, and it's actually a good way to do it. But for me, I usually try to take a month off here and there of recording, especially if I get a big batch of episodes. The beginning of this year, was pretty loaded. So the way that this world is, who knows what we could be doing? We may all be in the new Alien band. I don't know.
Right.
We don't know what's happening then. It's like I barely know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, it's on my calendar, but I still don't know what's going to happen. So for me, it's like I try to build in some blocks there, and sometimes I'll break my own rules. It's okay. You can do that. But I'm like, okay, I want to book this show, or I'll go on a show, for example, and just do it that way. But yeah, I try to release, there's at least one episode a week. There was a period where I was releasing episodes every day because I built up such a backlog. I'm like, it's not fair to these guests to have them wait forever for this.
Right.
So it's like I just started cranking them out and getting them out more, and then trying to land on, probably 3 times a week. Obviously, it's an ebb and flow thing. Thankfully, with it being my show, the boss is me, so I can argue with them as far as how many episodes. If I was part of a studio or something like that, it'd be something different. But I'm not at this point, so I've got a lot more flexibility in that. I talk to global thought leaders on anything and everything. Just people that have either new authors or small business people, to executives, to astronauts, to you name it, conductors of orchestras. Everybody's got a story that can benefit somebody, and that's the power of story. Is like hearing something. You may grab onto a nugget, like something that you and I talked about today. Someone watching or listening may go, "I'm going to try that," and it might make their life a little bit easier. If that happens, I'm ecstatic. I'm thrilled. I'm like, that's great. I'm glad that helped you. And I have these conversations. I know you know this too. I grow from these. I get excited. I write down notes, things, ideas, and stuff that improves me. Yes, I'm interviewing somebody, but I'm getting stuff from them too, and ideas or different ways to approach things, or, oh, I didn't know that you could do that, or who knows, there could be a lot of different things. So it's a blast. I have so much fun with it. I appreciate Steve and Kelly too. It's been amazing. I enjoy the heck out of it.
Cool. Yeah, I love a lot of the same aspects, Michael, and we'll have that in the show notes. I highly recommend our listeners check that out. Another great show on leadership and just getting 1% better. So, Michael, it's been a blast having you on here, sharing your words of wisdom on burnout and just your getting vulnerable with us and sharing your personal experience. I don't want to say it's a great story, right? Because we hate to have somebody that needs to go through something like that, but I think it's a powerful story. And we're blessed that you made it through that, and now you're able to share that. And just like myself, like you just said it, the goal here is really to affect one person, to have one person say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I will make a change." That's all it takes. That's why we do what we do, and we're learning and growing, and that's that's really the goal here. It's an infinite game. We're just on this journey and trying to embrace it and get a little bit better each day.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you, man, and I
Thank
look
you,
forward to being on your show. So
Likewise.
thank you for your time, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Be well. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bolt Podcast. You're on an inspiring journey of growth, transformation, and joy, and I'm honored to be a part of it. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends, and consider leaving a review. It means the world to us. For show notes, resources, and to subscribe to the weekly Motivational Monday newsletter, please visit toddbirch.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media at The Bolt with Todd B for more inspiration. Remember, real change doesn't happen overnight, folks. Start small, stay consistent, and watch as your growth unfolds. See you next time.